Today, we're talking environment. What are the ramifications of the environment? There's the problems we have with waste disposal in Nigeria. There's also the subject of climate change and environmental disasters. And there's also the business aspect of the environment. Are we doing enough in Nigeria as it is? Are people well educated to understand that some of the problems that are caused in the environment today in Nigeria, like flooding and what have you, are as a result of bad disposal of waste in the country? How come many states are still unable to have very sustainable arrangements towards waste disposal? And what about the business aspect? How many people are getting involved in that multi-billion naira business? Perhaps it could even be up to ₦1 trillion in terms of plastic waste processing. And how are those guys who are in this business, in that line of business, how are they faring today? Are they finding it easy? What can the government do for them to make their lives easier? What about the logistic challenges that they have in order to help the environment and help themselves by helping us clean up the environment, take out plastic waste, which may not be biodegradable for 200 or 250 years. This is a challenge as well as an opportunity. We see what is done in some parts of the world. China is meant to be a very big country in terms of the processing, further processing of this waste, which sometimes come out as clothing and as packaging and other things. This is a very interesting subject and, in fact, an area in which I'm very much interested. Joining us today to discuss this is Mr. Olasoji Alabi, the MD of Hydrate Solutions and entrepreneur, environmental entrepreneur, among many other things. Mr. Alabi is going to be discussing with us on some of these issues today. So you're highly welcome to your show on Trust TV, The Nationalist. Welcome, Mr. Alabi.
Thank you.
So what are your first thoughts, regarding some of the things that I've laid out today in terms of, let's even first of all look at the environmental management, our people, education and all of that.
When it comes to environmental management, I think Nigeria still has a very long way to go. Especially for we that we're into recycling. I think Nigerians really have a long way to go.
Wow.
From the sensitization, to knowing how to even manage your waste from your homes and all of that. Okay, let me give you a point of view. Nigeria produces about 2.5 million metric tons of plastic waste annually.
Annually, okay.
Yes, and of that 2.5 million metric tons, we're able to process or recycle just, I think, less than 12%. Okay. And then we have countries like Germany and Australia that have as much as over 5 million metric tons, and they are still able to process and recycle more than 60% of their waste. And then when you talk about countries like Austria, you see that more than 90 or 95% of their population manage their waste from their homes. Before the waste get out there to the dump sites or to wherever it's being processed, they manage the waste. So there's a lot of issues when it comes to managing waste. So we still have a very long way to go.
And what do you think can be done, by way of solution to get us to process more than 11, 12%, let's say to target maybe 40, 50%?
Okay, firstly, I think we are sort of picking up.
Okay.
And this picking up is from individual works, so to say. I don't know if, but I don't think the government is getting really involved in the way they should be getting involved, with managing of, especially recycling, you understand. So we have so many issues when it comes to even the recycling. Okay, I've talked about managing the waste from the homes.
Yeah.
We have technological issues as well.
Okay.
Nigeria, so to say, we don't really have our own technology to do or to handle most of the problems and issues that we have as a society. So we still have to import technology. You know, for Germany now, they are recycling a lot, and they have their own technology to recycle. China was managing or recycling more than 90% of the world's waste at the point, and that was because they had their own technology. You know, they could produce their own technology to actually manage these things. But we are in Nigeria, we don't even have our own technology. We have to import technology to manage our own waste. So those are like some of the major issues. So when it comes to recycling, people like us that are trying to, you know, do the recycling proper, it's a lot of work, because for you to recycle, you have to bring in those machineries, which come at very, very expensive prices and all of that. And then we have issues with our electricity as well.
Okay, before we get into the business aspect of it,
Okay.
so I mean, you mentioned, and it's something that really, really interests me, and I've always also talked about, the indigenous technology in Germany, in China, but I'm thinking about how that technology relates to managing your, you know, waste from home. Maybe I've not seen them. What I know is, okay, in parts like the UK, people are given different bins to put different things, and I believe that it's what can be done in Nigeria. I live in an estate now, and nobody is talking about that, really, to say, okay, separate your waste. It becomes conscious. Sometimes you can get credit, sometimes you can get money from it, you know. But even some of the most expensive estates, if you go to Banana Island, I'm sure nobody is separating anything. We think it's a big man thing, we dump it anyhow, and so on. But I'm also thinking about, so that's one level, the level of, you know, separating the waste into glass, into plastic, into paper, into food waste and all of that. But is there another kind of technology that those countries are deploying that makes it easier for their people?
Well, it's just like I said, it's about we as a people understanding that when you throw out something, it doesn't just disappear.
Yeah.
You have to have, there's something called like a consumer responsibility. As a consumer, you have to be responsible for the waste from whatever you consume. So I think the sensitization has been, you know, kind of entrenched into their system in most of these developed countries and the rest. So I think when we're talking about like the Ministry of Environment and the rest, I think there should be more of sensitization for people on how to be responsible for things that you consume. I think that is like one of the major points here. And because even we as recyclers, when most of those things that we even separate on our own, when they come to our side, you see a lot of things in them, things that even makes your equipment go bad, like really fast. You know, there are a lot of things inside the machine, inside the bottles that we recycle, a lot of foreign bodies that could affect your machines. But if you notice, things like this don't happen out there. You won't see someone using a bottle and then putting iron and wood and a lot of things, you know, inside. So I think the sensitization is one of the main things here. You understand? And that's for the consumers. And then when you are coming to we the recyclers now, then you can now start talking about the issues that we're having, like maybe the government being more supportive, creating some kind of funds that could help. You understand? Because waste management is a very, very expensive venture and very capital intensive. So you have the government coming to really, the government has to be very, 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 very aware of what they want to do. So that is that. And
you guys working, if the government is not coming to you, are you going to the government with ideas? You guys have an association that can put ideas together, especially at the level of getting the public to help you, to help your business, to make your lives easier, to make your machines last longer, or even giving you the permission to talk to estates, associations. You have very expensive estates in Abuja, where they can afford to, you know, or even maybe at the level of government providing those different kind of waste bins in some of the, whether the estate associations or the government, different kind of waste bins where you can go and pick up, or you also want to have a scenario where you can go to places, they kept their plastic waiting for you, just weigh it, pay them a token amount, move on. That token may be for the houseboy or whoever, you know, but it's an encouragement and it begins to be a culture, especially if it's not abused, you know. You know, so if government is not coming to you, are you guys going to government?
Yes, I'm a member of Recyclers Association of Nigeria. We have a body that we formed, you know, to be able to at least come together as a body and be able to talk with one voice. And in RAN, we have so many people that do some of these things that you say. You know, we have some people that have built applications, you know, mobile applications and the rest to pick up things. I know of some.
How does that app work? What does it tell you?
Okay, so well, you basically you just you order from your phone.
Okay.
And then someone comes to pick up from you.
Oh, okay.
And then you are paid
a
token.
Oh, I see.
Yes, you are paid a token for maybe per kilogram of bottles that are gotten from you. So just like I said, most of these efforts are individual efforts. You know, from people that are just environmentally conscious.
Okay.
You know, just like people like us, we got into this business not because we're interested in making money, but because we're interested in making sure that the environment that we are in continues to, you know, thrive. You know, and because we have lots of problems with the environment when it comes to, you know, waste and all of that. Plastic waste especially, because plastic waste could be in the ground for like many years.
Yeah, many years.
Hundreds of years, you know. So we are just trying to do our own bit.
I'm just hoping that, you know, this program we have today will actually speak to somebody in their houses, in their homes, heads of families, okay, madams who are in charge of the home, and I'm thinking, what is it we can tell them? What do you think we can tell them that would galvanize them to understand that this is a major issue, but it's also a win-win kind of opportunity, you know, so that we can see a change of attitude. It doesn't have to be people living in Maitama, if you're living in Kubwa, if you're living in Kuje, and all of that, and we're being watched from all over the world. What is that? If there was a few things you could tell them, what would that be, you know? Let's forget the government now, you know, that we speak directly to them at home.
Okay, I think it's happening already, because for like me, for example, or like our business, for example, we have a package where people in the communities that we are in, they come and they drop off their waste, and then they get paid for it, you know. And even in the, you know, the like places like the Maitama and the rest, you have so many people now, you know, that are building hubs there that you can go there to, you know, drop off your waste and get paid. So I think that's it. There's a lot of issues. So you have to be very conscious as a person. If you're using that plastic, make sure that you just don't throw it away, because when you throw it into the gutter and the rain falls, it blocks you and the water comes back. All the dirt that you threw out is going to come back into your house. So instead of that happening, why don't you just take it to the closest hub to you? Or just make your research. Make a very little research. I'm very certain you'll get somewhere around that you can drop off the waste,
so there's
and
money
then you
to
get
be
paid
made.
for it. So that's something.
You know, I wrote an article recently, which I tried to highlight, you know, I tried to estimate just how much money there could be in plastic, just looking at very roughly and so on. And I was seeing some billions to be made. And for those who even just pick and sell, I'm saying, so, you know, I was taking a walk on the streets of Akure one day recently, and I could see plastics everywhere. And I'm thinking, okay, so why are people poor? If you're really, really poor, and you can just go out there and keep picking these plastics, if you're really, really poor, let's say you're food poor, but you know, sometimes our people will say, me, touch, picking, they will say whether there's something wrong with me when I'm picking Coke bottles, but that's money. So I think I titled it A Country Where there's so much poverty, but there's also so much money lying down on the streets. You know, how can we change our people's attitude?
Well, that's actually true, because sometimes when I drive by too and I see plastic on the road, I'm always like, oh, this is money. I for one, like when I use any plastic, I try as much as possible. Like beginning of the year, I try to do like 100% recycling of plastic that I use personally. So even when I go out to restaurants and the rest, and I finish my drink and then I'm going out, I pick my bottle. I'm sure people look at me like, what's this guy doing? But then it is money. When you are going, I think most people are not just aware, or they don't have places that they can actually turn that into quick money. But come to where like our factory, where our factory is located, I doubt you see any plastic around, because people around know that it's value and they pick it. So
anyway, okay, let's keep it there for now. We'll take a short break and then we'll come back to Mr. Olasoji Alabi, who has been speaking to us about the environment. Welcome back, and we've been speaking with Mr. Olasoji Alabi, environmental expert and entrepreneur, on the challenges facing environmental management in Nigeria and the recycling business. So, as you were just speaking about the business aspect of things, you know, just before we left, and we had looked at some of the challenges that the business is facing, but I think looking up, you know, what about the export angle of things, as well as the uptake of some of your finished products in Nigeria? What's happening with that?
The business is a very, very lucrative business. In as much as you're able to solve most of the parts that you're supposed to solve, because it has very many moving parts that you have to put together. I'm not just talking about the machineries and the machinery alone. You know, the whole from the collection point to where you finish the processing, and then when you take it out of your factory. So you have to get all these points together, and once you get all of this, it's pretty much a very lucrative business. And some of us now, we are into like just export part of the business, and it's a win thing for the government, because we are bringing in forex.
Yeah,
you understand.
That's great. So, you know,
it's a very
any challenges with the ports?
Oh well,
sending
of course,
things out. How long? Any delays?
There are a lot of challenges with the export part, because even before your goods get to the port, when it gets to the port, there are little delays, or you know. That's pretty much it. But if you're able to handle all of those things, I think you should be fine.
And what do you think about the capacity for expansion? Is there room for expansion for it, and then, you know, to continue to get supply? Or is there going to come a time when there is too many people playing, and then to get the source of raw material becomes an issue?
Just like I say, when I say these things, some of my colleagues are out there and be like, oh, why are you telling everyone to come into recycling? I keep saying that. Like, everybody should be involved in recycling. The recycling really helped Chinese economy. You know, in the late 80s and the rest, they were able to, they gained so much from recycling the world's waste. They were able to, they made many millionaires in dollars out of it. So I encourage many people to come in. It's a long chain. There's a long value chain in the business. So you can always pick a point, you know, for you to get into, and then you work it up from there. But it's a long value chain, just like I said earlier, and there's so much room for expansion.
But rather than, you know, again, we're almost getting to the point of exporting raw materials again. Like we export raw crude oil, raw cocoa, raw sesame seed, raw granite, you know. And I saw a video online some time back in Chile where they were processing plastic into like roofing sheets, or, you know, because they could process it into roofing, so like an impenetrable item, because, you know, it came out as plastic as well, but it was long stuff like that. So what are the prospects of actually getting to do what China did with, or what they do with those recycling stuff, toys for the whole world, for example, through recycled items and so on. You know, what are our chances in Nigeria?
Yeah, as an entrepreneur, those are part of things we're looking at. We're looking at getting to that point that we don't have to move out the raw materials that we're getting, because the point of this whole thing is to be able to get to the maximum end of the value chain, to be able to process these things back into what we can use here in Nigeria. But just like I said, it's a very, very capital intensive business. For you to get to that part, it's going to cost a whole lot. And the point that we're in now, everybody's looking at the business continuing to be a growing concern, you know, the business moving forward. So you're looking at the best way and to get, you know, your value for what you're putting into it. But then we are all looking at, like, everybody into recycling. That's what we're looking at. We're looking at producing products, you know, being able to make carpets, being able to turn them back into bottles, and then maybe you have a facility that produces something that you can use the bottle for. And you know, being able to make them back into our clothing, like fabric. You know, we don't have to necessarily ship these things out, but it's just because of the situation.
Again, it's back to the issue of you know, indigenous technology. Because the other time I was reading something about SMEs in Germany, and of course we hear all sorts about SMEs in China. But the difference with those two and the SMEs here, what we call SMEs here, most of them are importers. You know, they import and sell, or import the machine, and you know. So maybe that's the challenge in order to, because I was going to ask, now the world trade is changing, and we're talking about Africa free trade and what we can do within Africa. Is there any prospect for this kind of business on an intra-Africa basis? You know, maybe, I don't know what's going on, maybe in Morocco, Algeria, Egypt, South Africa, Kenya, some of the manufacturing end. Is there any kind of way by which the business can stay within Africa so that we can turn over the money within Africa?
Yes, certainly it could be. Or just like I was saying, if we get to that point that we're getting to, like, the value chain, okay, let's say, for example, we are making pillows or things like this from it, and
pillows,
pillows, mattresses, and the rest. You know, there's a way that you can even actually make the pillow to be, you know, very compressed, and then you can have containers of these things being shipped out to other African countries. These are part of things we are looking at. So it is very, very possible for us to keep the chain and the value within our system here in Africa. It's very possible.
So you know, so what do you think, apart from, I think there's some point, I think recycling is one of those items that the central bank said they could support. You know, maybe, I don't know how much they can give for that and so on. But apart from financing, maybe you want to tell us a bit more, if you know much about the kind of support the central bank can give as an intervention, or whether they've given anyone before, I don't know, if the amount is adequate and so on. And any other thing you think that the government can do more for that industry?
Well, I've not heard about anything from the central bank, but what I think is, if they can make more funds, at least try to make, I don't think there's anything like that. I don't think I've heard of anything like that.
In fact, I think we should be pushing for cheaper funds for recycling, even from the banking sector.
Yes.
You know, because if they probably will lend to you at the general commerce rate,
of course,
which can be as high as 30%, 35%, and so on.
Yes.
And that's not good. I think we need to call more attention to this very environmentally sustainable business.
Yeah, because we're actually solving issues, like pressing issues.
Yeah.
Like in my place, we do over 10 million bottles, like, every month.
Wow.
Which is you know, like, if these bottles were out there, they'll be creating a lot of issues for even the government. And the government will be spending this money in solving those issues. So instead of spending the money in solving those issues, they could make, you know, the funds available for people that are actually solving the problems.
And there's one very interesting aspect, I don't know if you do, and which I think makes a lot of sense. Very poor families being able to survive. I know that you probably would tell me how many people you employ, because that's our employment. The people who sort the plastics, who, you know, those maybe ladies, women, and so on. I don't know how many you do. You tell us how many in your employment, you know. But I've also seen an instance where some schools allow very poor indigent students to pay their school fees with plastic, and then companies like yours will then collect from the school. They make a bit of spread, but they pay also I mean, they pay no, they don't even have to pay. What they use it to represent school fees. They can then offload to companies like you. That's a very ingenious idea in helping the poor people. But how many people do you employ?
Well, right now we have over a little over 30 staff.
What about those impromptu women who sort stuff?
We have maybe roughly about 30 of them.
Wow.
That do the sorting and all of that. So for the
how much do you think they can make in a day, or is it weekly?
Like monthly? I don't think there's anybody that works in our place that earns less than the minimum wage.
Wow.
And we actually made it like that, for what you talked about with the paying of school fees, yes. Just like I said, we're like in RAN. We're an association. We have so many people. We have people that are into sensitized, because when you're talking about waste and being environmental conscious, there are lots of aspects of it. Some of us are doing the proper, I won't say proper, the operational thing. We have people that are into the sensitization part, making sure that the communities are aware of some of these issues that comes with disposing of your waste like in proper ways, you understand? And their own work too helps us sort of, because they go to these people and then these people are aware. So we also have people there that are doing this partnership thing with like insurance companies, health insurance companies to make sure that some of these people bring in their waste and then they pay for their health insurance with this material.
Interesting. Yes. Last question. I understand that this is a business without no waste. So it's like you take the waste and then everything disappears. What do you have to say about that? That's a plastic, Coca-Cola plastic, or a water bottle, with the cap on. What's the process? How does it work that everything disappears?
Let's just say the Coca-Cola bottle, for example. It gets into our factory, it gets, sorted, and then it goes into the machines. The label is removed. Then it gets crushed. And then
the cap is different.
Then the cap is, it's still with the,
it's still with the cap,
Yeah, then it goes into another machine that washes it. And then it goes into another machine that separates the caps. And then the caps go somewhere else. And then it goes into a dryer, and then the remaining plastic then goes into a dryer. It is dried, and then that's it.
Thank you very much for coming on the show, and I think it's been a very educative and edifying program that we've had today. I'm sure, I'm sure we've convinced quite a few people to take plastic waste more serious, and maybe some to realize that they've been throwing away money, and perhaps they will change their minds going forward, and that's good. I think the Minister of Environment should really recognize what you guys do, and also, there's so much jobs that can be created also in the environment. Thank you very much. You've been speaking to Mr. Olasoji Alabi on the environmental sector, and I hope you've gained quite a few points today from our discussion. See you next week.